Perfect. We can get started. So before we do, thank you guys for coming to our Racism in Tech workshop / discussion. It's going to be, one, we're going to go over a lot of statistics that might shock you and maybe might not shock you, and you probably know all of them already. And then two, we're going to take some time to share our experiences and then share just like how it feels being a person of color in tech, and then just what those experiences have been like. If you want to share your experience but don't necessarily feel comfortable talking about it, like unmuting and talking about it, there's a form that we can send out in the chat. You can fill it out anonymously, and then we can talk about it here. If you're comfortable with us sharing it here, we can talk about it here. And if you want to jump in then when we share it, feel free to do that as well. But to start off, we're going to jump into Tech Person of the Week, and Suna's going to start us off.
Hi, sorry, there are birds chirping. I don't know if you could hear that. Not even chirping, they're like, yeah. Okay, anyway. So for this week, our Tech Person of the Week is Jasmine Crow, and she is the founder and CEO of her company, Gooder, which is a food waste management company that redirects extra food that businesses have to nonprofits that can help those in need. And as of this March, her company has actually diverted over 2 million pounds of surplus food from landfills, which is about 1.8 million meals. And Jasmine leveraged blockchain technology to coordinate the collection and distribution of food donations and to provide secure IRS-friendly tax deductions, which is how she motivates businesses to join her cause. And in an interview she did with Microsoft, she said that she had absolutely no tech background when she was founding her company. So when she had to talk to developers for her app and other things, there was a learning curve. So I wanted to highlight Jasmine this week for overcoming this and using her tech skills in such a significant way.
That's an amazing Tech Person's Week. I really like how she basically had to navigate the world of tech without having a lot of tech background, especially as a woman of color. It's hard interacting with people who know everything about tech, and then just like they think anyone who doesn't know anything about tech is like, how do you not know this stuff? So it's really cool that she got involved in that world and then made it through and made an amazing product. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen for this exercise, but we're about to go into breakout rooms to do a mini exercise on how you can check your bias, I guess. So I'm gonna make those rooms now. All right, I think these rooms are good. So everyone on eBoard, you basically when you get into your rooms, the eBoard member in your room is going to walk you through the exercise, and then some time to chat about it at the end. We are going to take 10 minutes on this exercise. So we do the exercise and then some time to talk. All right, I'm opening the rooms. Actually, sorry, give me 1 second. All right, cool. The rooms are open.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hi. Chloe, Angelina, do any of you guys have a preference?
I haven't even looked at this exercise. Where is it supposed to be?
It's in the general channel in Slack.
Okay, sorry. Does someone else mind doing it then?
Yeah, I can go for it.
Well, thank you.
Okay. So this is kind of like a visualization exercise. So if you're ready, whenever you're ready, you can close your eyes and I will paint say okay, anyway. Okay. So you're late to catch a flight. You rush through this airport, making it through security and running to the gate. You go down the jetway and get on the plane, and just as they're closing the doors, the pilot steps out of the cockpit and says hi. After you arrive at your destination, you go to a restaurant for dinner, and you have the best meal of your life. At the table next to you is a couple happily celebrating their anniversary. The next morning, you go to the biggest technology conference in the world, and the CEO of this year's hottest tech startup just took the stage to speak. At this time, you should have a solid image in your mind of all these scenarios now, so you guys can open your eyes, and I have a few questions for you. Okay, so I'll just list all the questions, then we can talk about it after. So in your visualization, was the pilot Black? Was the couple interracial? Was the CEO a woman of color? And it's okay if the answer to any or all of these kinds of questions was no. Your brain creates images of what's familiar and doesn't really default to things that aren't so familiar. And the examples that I mentioned before are generally less common. So even if you fully support the idea of people in color in these roles, when immediately confronted with these positions, your brain might default to what's familiar within milliseconds before you even consciously think about it. So these are kinds of some of the unconscious biases that we're not even aware of. And you might be wondering, what can you do about this? Being aware of your biases is an important first step in overcoming them. And beyond that, actively exposing yourself to situations that go against what the biases might expect can be another great way to overcome them. Okay, so that's the end of the little spiel I had. So if you guys have any or had any sort of like preconceived images in your head that went against, I don't know, feel free to share.
I kind of feel like a cheater because I've already done that before. As soon as you said pilot, I was like, oh no, I know this. But I will say, like, I still had the same images of, like, generally, like, white men and, like, a white couple in my mind, even though I, like, knew that that was not what I was supposed to be, like, defaulting to. So.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I feel like if I redid this activity, I'd still be aware, but just changing like the millisecond, like immediate reaction is difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess being aware of it is a big step in the first place.
I feel like I've never seen this like prior to like today. Like I do think that like the media and like just people in general, like media and like magazine companies and stuff like that, they generally show just like one kind of person, like that like white couple or like that young like male like tech CEO. So I feel like I don't know, I feel like it's definitely just present like in our everyday life, like just things are reinforcing like the stereotypes.
Yeah, no.
Curious to see how this exercise would work for people in like other countries where maybe, you know, I feel like it makes sense for most Americans to visualize like white people, but I'm also wondering like how it might be internationally for other people if they would have sort of like the same visualization.
That is a good point. But I think especially since like America's supposed to be like the melting pot, growing up with like certain ideas, like when we turn on the TV when we're like 4 years old and then we see the same kinds of people over and over again. Like when we're 4, we're not consciously like saying, okay, this is what I'm going to picture. It's just what we see and what's like ingrained into our heads. And now that we're older, it's hard to get rid of like those immediate pictures, even though we're more aware of it, I guess. I don't know. What do you guys think? Like, any way to change it? What contributed to it in the first place? How we change, like imprinting it into the next generation of young people?
I mean, personally, I think it's from like this idea of the white man as being superior, and it's happened since like colonization time, and like Christopher came to the US and then went to Africa and everything. And ever since, like, the white man is seen as like superior to all other races and stuff. Even though like now with like the Black Lives Matter movement, people are starting to realize it more. But I feel like it's gonna take like years for it to be fixed. You know, like we can't just be like, oh, it's a thing, so everything changes right away. I think it takes like steps. Yeah, and finding those steps, like the right steps in order to get to where we want to be is important.
Yeah,
I also
very true. Oh, you can go.
I also think that we're very much products of our experience. So like while we were going through that exercise, I like when you said pilot, I thought of like one time an airplane pilot like stood out to me and like talked to me, so I pictured like him. And then like when you said CEO, like I thought of the CEO of the company where I'm co-oping. So I feel like it's obviously like important to kind of like diversify our society even more so than like what we see in media. Not that we can't do both, but I think it really just depends on like who you grew up around and who influenced you in your life.
No, yeah, that's definitely true. We base our thoughts based on like what we see, whether it's TV or our actual lives. So we have to make changes into both, but easier said than done again.
Yeah, and like I've co-oped at 2 places, and in both of those places, like the CEOs were like, well, like there were 3 CEOs, and like 2 out of 3 of them were like white guys. Yeah.
Like I haven't co-opted anywhere or met any pilots or anything, but I still pictured I pictured a white couple. I pictured a tall white guy as the pilot and the tech CEO. Like I mean, my brain didn't do it on purpose, but it came from somewhere.
I also pictured like older white men, like pilots and CEOs. I don't know why, but like in their 60s maybe.
I don't have like any more questions to ask, but how are you guys?
Good. How are you? Oh, someone's here.
Yeah, I've been hopping around all the different breakout rooms because I want to see what people had to say. Yeah, how's it? We have like a minute left. How's it going?
Did anything stick out to you from the other breakout rooms?
Yes. The one I was just in, they were talking about how we could talk about this more when we get back to like the main session. But I mean, all of my professors in CS since I've been here have all been white men. I don't think I've had a woman, actually maybe one like white like woman professor for database design, but other than that, all of them have been.
Yeah, I haven't had a single woman professor except for like prob stats, but that's math, not CS.
Yeah.
I had one for Fundies, but I think she left like last year.
Is it Naji?
Yeah.
I had her too.
All right, I'm gonna hop back. You guys can keep going for a little bit. I'm gonna hop back to the main session.
She
That's
was
actually a
definitely
good point. Oh,
no, she was like definitely the most diverse like professor I've had. She was like a woman. I think she was from. She mentioned she was from like the Middle East somewhere, I think. And then she also had like this like she had really nice hair. It was like really curly. It was like Lord's hair, if you know who Lord is. Yeah, but she was pretty cool. I liked her. I wish there were like more like of her.
I feel like it's not as hard as they make it seem to find these people to hire. I mean, I don't really know anything about like hiring practices, but there's definitely got to be more than what we're seeing.
I feel the same way about like my job. Like they've been hiring a bunch of people lately, and it's all like white men. And I'm like, come on, just like try.
Yeah.
Like everyone they're interviewing too.
Oh my gosh. I mean, look at all the people in this club right now.
Yeah. All right. See you
It was nice
guys.
to meet you guys. Bye.
In one of the, I was in the, like, set off Danya and Rachel and Sumina's group, I think, and Chloe was the one where they were talking about, I think that was the one, but how professors, oh wait, no, not Sumina, but how most professors that I've had in CS have been white men. And I think that's very interesting. And I never actually thought about it until they mentioned it. Does anyone else want to share anything that stood out to them from their groups?
This isn't anything that we mentioned in while talking, but I've never had a female CS teacher, like at Northeastern.
Me too. I've had one, Kathleen Durant, for database, and that's it.
I had Amal for like Fundies one last year, but I think that's the only female teacher I've had as well.
I've worked for Alina, but I've never had her.
Crazy. What were you gonna say, Vincent?
I also had them all. Yeah.
Is she accelerated?
Yep, Fundies one accelerated.
Now we're gonna get into, I'm gonna share, I forgot to share my screen, but I'm gonna share my screen again. And we're gonna get into some current day statistics and examples.
Okay, so I hope you guys learned something in your breakout rooms. We'll be going back into them later to reflect on the new topics. Okay, so when I was researching this topic about people of color in the tech industry throughout history, there really wasn't much information about the past, like at all. And the unfortunate fact is just that there wasn't much POC representation back in the day, and just the amount of difficulty I had finding any information at all about the past just shows how they weren't focused on this in the first place to even have any reports about it. So shifting to current day information, in this meeting, we want to spend more time talking about like the implications of all these statistics. And we hear about percentages of people of color in STEM field as executives. But before we jump into examples and actionable items, I just want to establish some basis for these examples. So here are some statistics about the representation of people of color in tech. Someone, do you want to go to? Yeah, thank you. Okay, so out of all 500 Fortune 500 companies, only 4 have Black CEOs, and none of them are in tech. And also, out of all science and engineering employees, only 11.5% of them are women of color, whereas 70% of all STEM workers in the US are white. And also, women of color represent such a small minority of STEM graduates, with Black, Hispanic, and Asian women all representing only like 3 to 5% each, which is insane. So the lack of diversity in companies and teams is more harmful than we think, because if the developers that are making all these algorithms for other humans, if they're not representative of the population that they're making it for, then the programs aren't just excluding some parts, but they actually harm some demographics. And one example of bias was in this hospital algorithm by this company called Optum, which was used for over 200 million patients per year in the US. So this algorithm was used to refer patients to healthcare programs by assigning risk scores to patients and recommending those with higher scores to extra care. So one researcher found that Black people were usually assigned lower risk scores for having the same health conditions than equally sick white people. So they were less likely to be referred because they had lower scores. And he found out that the algorithm based the risk scores on total healthcare costs gathered in 1 year for one person. And the developers thought it was okay to proceed with this data set because everyone in their data set had similar overall costs. But the researcher found out that the average Black person in the data set had significantly more health conditions than the average white person. So like kidney failure, diabetes, and stuff. So the care provided was actually about $1,800 less per year for a Black person than a white person with the exact same health conditions. And this is because of like Black people getting reduced access to care and other factors. But so all these biases were passed on to the algorithm, which now said Black people had to have more severe conditions than white people to be referred for the exact same program. And altogether, out of all the patients that the algorithm assigned to receive extra care, only 17% of them were Black. And the researcher also calculated that if the algorithm actually were fair and if it was not biased, it would have been 46.5%, which is so much different. The researcher reached out to the developers of the algorithm who, they repeated the experiment, found out that they got the same results, and they adjusted the algorithm to find other variables to determine the risk score, which just from these initial changes reduced the bias by 84%. So the researcher overall presented that this whole thing was in part due to the lack of diversity in the algorithm developers because they weren't trained in these social and historical contexts, and they didn't consider to factor these into account. So this is just one example of racial bias in an algorithm. And now Gigi will share a couple more algorithms of this, but in social media examples, just to give you more of a background on how common algorithmic bias is.
All right, thank you, Sumana. So yeah, like she said, we're going to go into some social media examples now. So these are companies that you're most likely very, very familiar with. So first of all, we have an example of the Twitter algorithm selecting brighter faces automatically. So when choosing the thumbnail for a tweet that contains a picture, the Twitter algorithm supposedly chooses the brightest part of the picture, which might sound reasonable at first. But a Twitter user did an experiment to see which faces Twitter automatically selected in its thumbnails. And to do so, it checked with a picture containing two similar images of Mitch McConnell and Barack Obama. So you can see on the slide that they're relatively similarly set up, wearing a tie, like facing forward, close up. But consistently, the algorithm selected the pictures of Mitch McConnell for the thumbnails. And when people brought up that it might be similar or it might be related to the ordering or other aspects, the user flipped the orders of the pictures and even changed the background and tie colors. However, the Twitter algorithm still repeatedly selected the picture of McConnell, and it actually only would select Obama once the brightness of his picture was greatly increased, lightening his skin tone in the process and turning the brightness way down for McConnell's. This shows how the Twitter algorithm may be less likely to select the faces of people of color because it tends to select for that lighter skin tone. So this is, again, another example of bias in algorithms that wasn't factored in when the program was being designed, but there are a lot more biases similar to this that need to be considered. And then moving on to Facebook. So Facebook has, oh, no, same slide.
Sorry.
That's okay. So there has been a lot of discussion around Facebook censoring the speech of racial activists. So Black activists, such as Black Lives Matter organizer Tanya Faison, using Facebook, have repeatedly had their posts censored as being hate speech, actually, and this has potentially led them to getting banned as well. So anti-racism consultant Natasha Marin experienced this, getting banned by Facebook for 3 days for simply posting a screenshot of a racist message she had received. Facebook does this so frequently to activists that it's now referred to as getting zucked. And these actions from Facebook end up stifling voices that are already marginalized, which are the very people that hate speech policies are supposed to protect. So not only do the bans cut people off from using Facebook for social purposes like connecting with their family and friends, but it can actually have even more serious repercussions too. So if these users run Facebook accounts for their businesses or organizations, for instance, they can even be banned from using the website for those purposes. And Facebook has also come under fire for the way it treats its Black employees. So both of these examples show that although we have made progress in the tech world in terms of bias and algorithms, there's still a lot more work to do and we can't consider ourselves done. So having more diverse engineers could create less biased algorithms because these people will have a more diverse team and will bring a variety of perspectives to the table and hopefully will work to create fewer biases in the algorithms.
That's amazing. Thank you guys for that insight. All right, so next up, I'm gonna try take a screenshot of these questions and then send them in the chat so we could save them before we go into the breakout rooms. But basically, we just heard a lot of information about how just being a person of color works when you're online and even when you're trying to find healthcare. So we just want to like spend some time to talk about it in our breakout rooms. These are just like a few questions you can think about in the rooms, or you could just like basically discuss what you heard. So now I'm going to stop sharing and take a screenshot, and then send it in the chat. And then you guys can save it if you want. All right, just sent it. And then while you guys save that, I'm all right. All right, cool. I'm opening all the rooms.
Hello. Hey. Hey, Aries. All right.
The questions. Yeah, I was curious about this. If any of you guys have been on co-op, or more likely in your classes, like what does the demographic look like?
Of course, it was mainly like male dominated in the computer science field, and not as many Black people or Latinos. Mainly like there are a couple people of color, but mainly white people, and yeah, not that many Black or Latinos.
Yeah, definitely agreed. I also noticed like in the beginner classes, like fundies and stuff, there's more, it's like a bit more diverse, but as you go like to level classes, it gets a lot less diverse.
Yeah.
And obviously is not good.
Yeah, I had the same experience. I haven't been on co-op yet, but yeah, fundy is definitely like, it was a lot more balanced in terms of the gender ratio. But like in my like watching comp class, like that was mostly like male. Yeah, which is unfortunate.
What would you guys say about like your professors?
I mean, I've only had like one like non-white male. I had Amal, Ahmed, yeah. But like, yeah, it's pretty unfortunate in the as it goes for our professors. I don't know.
I think the only professors of color I've had so far have been in different departments.
It's interesting. I've surprisingly had like a couple. I had a Black professor for networks, Professor Jackson. I had South Asian professor for discrete. I had Middle Eastern professor who was a woman for fundies. But other than that, it's been mostly white men. I definitely like to see a lot more women of color in Corey because I feel like there are not a lot at all. Yeah. Okay, what else? Were the examples presented different from what you initially had in mind about the topic of racial bias and algorithms, and what did you think before?
I don't know if it was very different from what I expected, because like as soon as the like anything like that, like on Twitter, like when they were all of that, based on the people I follow, like I saw that like pretty quickly, and I was like, yeah. But yeah, and just like seeing kind of like missteps from companies and like over time, like being kind of disillusioned in terms of that.
And there's this idea of colorism where like a lighter skinned Black person is more likely to be allowed into a company over like their darker skin counterpart. And like even with tech, like I mean, I didn't see tech as being that biased. I've heard of like with voices, if you have like an accent, like Siri might not pick it up as much as if it was like straight English with no like weird enunciations and stuff.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. I know I've read like something about also people's names on resumes, like if they aren't like typical English names or if they're like some sort of foreign name, those type of people might be like less likely to get an interview or to get hired just based on their name. It's really unfortunate.
Actually, I have a story about this. I had my co-op clearance meeting with my advisor last week, and I asked her if I should use my Vietnamese name as well as my English name on my resume. And she actually said that might hinder your chances of getting promoted because companies might overlook you and think you're an international student.
Yeah, I think I've like read about that as well, like certain co-op advisors like telling people to like use an English name instead of like their whatever their name is, which is really messed up. Did you decide what you're gonna do?
I'm probably gonna just go with my English name. Like,
Yeah.
I like still have my last name on there, which is like not an English last name.
Okay. Did any of the numbers or examples surprise you? I feel like that's the same type of idea. Oh, that's shady. Question.
Not really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like the Twitter thing, like when I saw it at first, I was like, are you serious? Like, I feel like that's something
like someone would have seen before. Like that would have come up earlier, yeah.
Oh man. Well, what can you do? All right. I guess I'll see you guys back in the main room.
To like the professors and like the students would specifically go to like the only POC students and be like, is this true? Or like some other dumb things. That's my school.
That's my school. Yeah, it's like it's very exhausting like having to like explain it all the time. And like this isn't tech related, but like I have like had to deal with a lot of people just being like taking any stereotype about the Middle East or Arabs that they can think of and being like, so like literally what you just said, Shania, where it's like, is this true? Like, do you really take camels to school? Like, can women drive in Dubai? And I'm like, yes, I had my license. So it's like, it's just like that stuff. And then again, this is like, I guess this kind of goes back to like a tech and then kind of not tech. It's just like there are certain terms and like the way people learn things that's like it's just not how I learned them. So just having to adjust to that kind of stuff is a little, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. We're gonna have a section to talk about this, but I'm gonna share my screen again, and then we can go back to talking. Oh wait, not sharing my screen. Then we can go back to, there's a whole section for this. Okay. All right, so we just heard a lot about disparities in social media and medicine and a lot of different fields with algorithms, how it kind of disadvantages people of color. So the one thing that I want everyone to get out of this is, what do we get out of having a diverse workplace? Like, what do we gain out of getting diversity in tech? And Sumana and Gigi kind of covered it already, where you don't get mistakes like the ones we just saw. Like, you get a well-rounded like society, I guess, where it's like everyone gets equal, like everyone gets represented equally, everyone gets equal rights. So that's basically what we get. But so one thing that I feel like a lot of people have the question of is there a difference between a workplace that's diverse and one that's not diverse? Does anyone have, like, literally thumbs up? Do you think, and this is like an easy question, but do you think having a diverse workplace is better? You can do the Zoom reactions. Do you want to know who else agrees with you? I'm actually gonna stop sharing so I can share my audio again. The Senior Vice President of Software Engineering from Apple actually agrees with all of you. So I'm going to share my screen and we're gonna watch, see what he has to say about this. Can you guys hear that all right? Just like verbal confirmation because I can't see you guys.
Yes.
What about, so it's great that you mentioned the ability to respect and see different perspectives. So just in general, I know when you and I spoke earlier this spring, we talked about efforts here at Berkeley to foster a culture of inclusion in engineering, and to just ensure that everybody has a chance to thrive here rather than just to survive. How do you think this diversity plays a role in tech, in the tech industry specifically?
Well, I mean, it's hugely important, and I know it's an area that, of course, when we look at some statistics, it's an area where the industry could do better, where we'd like to do much better, and that's an important problem to solve, because when you think about building the best products, I think the best products come from diverse teams. Fundamentally, they come from understanding your customer, and your customer comes from all kinds of backgrounds and experiences and desires and aptitudes. And if the people in the room have a narrow perspective on what the customer wants, what the customer will understand, you're going to build something that's very narrow. And I found over and over these areas where having the right set of people in the room, it's eye-opening. You go, well, of course everyone wants this, and someone says, actually no, or actually this is, I really value this, and you're like, really? And you realize how narrow sometimes you can be viewing things if you just have a single viewpoint in the room. And I mean, this has to do with both, culture and what national customs, age, what's currently fashionable or popular of different demographics. I mean, you need this diversity along every dimension will inform you to build the right product. And it's not just understanding the customer, it's also that the diversity of domain backgrounds, of ways of looking at the problem, are where you make those leaps. We can spend our time kind of optimizing in our lane, but where the really interesting stuff happens is when you cross the lanes, and that only happens by having this diverse set of disciplines together at the table. So it's
all right, cool. So, but I forgot to, I think I slightly forgot to mention, but this was the Senior Vice President of Engineering at Apple. So he thinks having a diverse workplace is important, as well as a lot of other people, and I agree. One specific reason that I thought of is having representation in the workplace. I mean, this is just coming from my experience on co-op too. It just leads to feeling safer, or you belong at work. when you have more representation, you have more people that you can relate to, more people that you can get close to and learn from. All of that, like everything that happens, like learning and all of the things you need to succeed in work, kind of just comes from getting along with the people you work with, and getting all of that, which can only happen if you see people like you at work. So that's something I thought about from my personal co-op. The next thing that I'm actually, like, it surprised me, is profit. People don't necessarily think that having a diverse workplace will benefit the company more. But in 2015, there was a report that looked at 366 companies, and then found that the ones with like ethnically and racially diverse people in management were 35% more likely to have greater financial returns. And I thought that was really interesting because like people just think that it's like it just feels better and you create better products, but you also make more money. So there really isn't a reason to not want to have a diverse workplace. All right, this next part, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen again so we could go to the part that I promised like 3 minutes ago. And then Baden's gonna lead us in some of this.
Thank you, Sama. So we are gonna spend like the next couple of minutes or so discussing experiences that have been shared by students of microaggressions or like general racism in tech, you know, whether that's in class or co-op. And as Sama mentioned, we sent a Google form on our newsletter and our socials, and students share anonymously any forms of racism that they've seen or have been on the receiving end of. And I'm going to share a couple that I received permission to share, but I also want to keep the conversation like super open-ended. So like if you have any experiences that you just want to jump in and share, you can unmute your mic, share it, you could drop in the chat. You could also privately message it to me if you don't want everyone knowing, and I can share it anonymously. And I think that like many people like feel unable to voice like racism and microaggressions that they encounter like in the workplace and classes. So I hope everyone understands that this is like a super safe space to discuss anything that you're comfortable with. So the first experience that I wanted to highlight was from a third-year student who said, "Little to no Black people in tech makes it very hard to believe as a Black person that you can make it, and it generally reduces the sense of solidarity within the major amongst Black, Indigenous, and people of color." And I can make a comment about this. I think I completely agree with the sentiment, you know, as a Black person in tech. And like in my Fundies 1 class, you know, my first CS class, you know, I'm new to the field, new to the major, new to Northeastern. And like to my view, I was the only like Black person in the room. And like, it can be very unsettling. And like, it made me think that like, you know, I'm in this like large introductory class and there's like very few to no Black people in the class. Like I'm scared to like progress in the university and see like what are these like smaller upper level classes, what are they gonna look like? Which is like pretty scary. Does anyone have any comments that they want to add in response to this statement, or have you felt anything similar?
If no one else has anything. Oh wait, no, you go.
So yeah, I'm a first year, so I'm actually taking Fundies 1, so I can definitely agree. I mean, even though I'm not on campus, I'm doing it virtually, and like I'm in a group chat where we're all, you know, the Fundies group chat for this year, and I like scroll to see like who's in it, and there's like barely any Black people, or not to speak of Black women in Fundies. Yeah, so I can definitely agree.
Anyone else have a comment they want to share? Yes, Sama.
The one thing I was mentioning this earlier, just the idea of like feeling like safe. I like found it very hard to ask questions because one, I didn't know like how to phrase them because I came from like an international, like it was like a completely different curriculum. So having to adjust to like American curriculum and like know what to ask professors, because I feel like some of the things I asked sometimes came off as like like, what are you asking? Like, what is this? So just coming from like that different background and then just feeling like nervous to ask questions is very unsettling, especially because the way you do well in these classes is you just have to ask a bunch of questions. So I'm a very inquisitive person now.
That is a very good point, Salma. The second experience that I wanted to
I
share
think
was
Anya
from.
had something to say.
Oh, she did? Oh, did I cut you off? I'm sorry.
It's okay. Because I know you also want to be mindful of time, but I totally second the whole like feeling very like alone in tech, and also like that ties in with my hesitation for asking questions, at least my first year, because in my year I was like one of two visibly like Muslim women, and I'm also Middle Eastern and international. So I always felt self-conscious when I was presenting in class or asking questions, which is totally reasonable. Like a lot of students feel this way anyways, but to me it was that added pressure of like, I'm representing my people. I don't want people to think I'm this like, you know, like foreign like student who is not as smart or isn't as intelligent. And obviously like I knew that I wasn't that person, but I felt like I always had to be like extra sure that everybody knows that. And I would feel like incredibly insecure if I felt like people had like the wrong impression of me. So that's just my experience with that.
Okay, since there's only 3 minutes till 7, that was very nice. All the things that we had shared about, you know, our racist experiences. And I'm super happy that we have this space at Multi to discuss these issues in our community. But, you know, having discussions, you can only go so far. So I think now we're going to jump into how to make, you know, an actionable impact.
Yes, give me a second. I'm going to share my screen.
And just in the meantime, if anybody does want to continue this conversation, in the community Slack, there's an inclusion chat channel, which, I mean, you can definitely keep talking about your experiences there if you'd like. This is a really good dialogue that we have going. So again, thank you for all sharing your experiences.
So as Baden mentioned, it's important. So one, just to recap what we've done in this meeting is we are more aware of, I mean, if we weren't already aware of this, we're just more aware of what the status quo is. And then we shared our personal experiences and talked through those. So now we want to see what we can do. The first thing that I want to mention, if she's still here, Iftida, to talk about something she's been working on, and Dania has also been working on this. Dania is our advisor and previous president. Build for Black Lives.
Yep. So yeah, and Shania's been working on it as well. Yeah, so Build for Black Lives is a platform that I think about 9 of us have been pulled together. It's basically a platform that connects Black-owned businesses and advocacy groups to individuals who can do pro bono tech design or marketing work for them. We launched it in the summer, and we have like a good number of projects on there right now. So anybody has any level of you know, like web dev experience or social media experience, or you're learning to design and things like that, would really love you to check out the open projects. I think it's a really great way to you know, build up your skills by doing something that has a lot of social value to it.
I was muted, but I said thank you for sharing. This is like a great way to make an impact, especially we, like as people in tech, we need to think about how we can use our knowledge to create and then to basically change the status quo. One other way to make an impact, I don't know if Sumina, Baden, or Gigi want to hop in on any of these. Feel free to hop in whenever. But attending meetings like this one just is basically you're taking a step in the right direction. You want to learn, you want to hear other people's thoughts, you want to see how you can make a change. And then the other thing is using your voice. One thing that I noticed was, we talk about this a lot, but companies haven't really, I feel like companies only started to be diverse when they really noticed everyone taking this like stance on what you need to have more diverse companies. So using our voice to show the tech industry that having a diverse workplace matters, you bring in different ideas, just kind of showing them our value. And then I don't know if any like Gigi, Baden, or someone want to hop in on the exposing yourself to different perspectives and maybe give an example with that one.
I don't have an example, but before, like, if any of the other first years or any other students leave, I just wanted to say, like, if you're ever just confused in classes or, like, just struggling for any reason, like, because of you don't feel comfortable because you're at home, you don't see look like you who are like you, please feel free to like reach out to any of the e-board members. I did that last year. I talked to one of the e-board members after one meeting because I was just so overwhelmed with fundies and stuff. So please, like, we want to help you. Like, I literally did the same thing, and just feel free to talk to any of us, talk in the community Slack. Yeah, I just wanted to say that before any of you guys had to leave.
I feel like it's a rite of passage with Multi because I've also done that. Just stayed back to ask them for some advice. All right, so as we mentioned, it's important to keep learning. We were going to walk through the Multi's Black Lives Matter guide. It also includes resources for people of color, so non-Black people of color also. So if you want to take a look at that. And then we're going to post these resources after if you want to learn some more about this topic. Does anyone want to talk about next week? I can talk about it.
I can do it. So next week, HubSpot is coming in to discuss their personal projects and D&I initiatives. I'm really excited about this. It's named the best company for diversity. It's located in Boston. There's like a bunch of internal groups there, such as those for employers who are like female, Black, LGBTQ, and like parents. I'm really excited for this. You guys should all come to the event next week.
Hey, yeah, we're gonna do, as Chloe mentioned, we're gonna get to hear a lot more about how a huge company, big company like HubSpot, is working towards change. And it's good to see that support coming from a company that big. All right, we're wrapping up, unfortunately, because I would love to spend more time talking about all of these things. But thank you guys for coming. Thank you for, if you unmuted yourself and participated, thank you so much for doing that. And we'd love to hear your feedback. So please fill out this feedback form if you have any. You can either use the QR code or the bit.ly link. We'd love to hear what you have to say.